Hello fellow modelers, Bruce here. This is going to be the beginning of a video that will follow me as I build the Campbell Scale Models covered bridge for my Slate Run Railroad. And if you watched my update a month or two back, you know that I talked about the fact that the reason I chose the Slate Run Railroad out of the myriad of logging railroads in Pennsylvania was that it had a few attributes that interested me as a modeler, and one of those was it was one of a handful of logging railroads in Pennsylvania that actually had a covered railroad bridge. And although I was going to scratch build it, this kit came up for sale on eBay at a very reasonable price, and I decided, well, what the heck, let's start with the Campbell kit and modify it as needed. So here we are looking at the template sheet that Campbell generally provides with all of its bridges and trestles and so forth. And one of the things that I mentioned was that the bridge itself is a bit longer as designed than what I wanted on my layout. This scales in HO to 107 feet long. It's basically a H-O-W-E, truss bridge that is then covered in. And I said I wanted to play around with this diagram, make some photocopies, cut and paste, and see what it would be like if I shortened it. And it turns out that if I just look at the side view here, if I just eliminated the center two trusses here, fairly easy thing to do, and I would end up with a bridge 82 feet long. And although originally I was thinking of taking a third truss out, I finally decided that it would start to look too short and stubby, and I would leave it at 82 feet, and I'll work with that. Very easy on the side view. And then you look at the bottom view here, you'll notice, well, first of all, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 segments on the side view, and there's also 8 down here on the bottom. But you will notice that one of them is wider than the other, and that's this one here. And you also notice that it's not centered. There's 4 segments on this side and 3 on that side. And if I take a couple segments out, and I got to make sure that it ends up the same 82 feet long that I have up here, again, it's not going to be centered unless I took one, well, even if I took one from each side. So knowing that in advance, I started cutting and pasting. Here's what I ended up with. Here's my side view, now having basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 segments. Those numbering up there was for me to keep it in my mind before while I was cutting and pasting as how it looked in the original. So that is now 82 feet long, side view, and I'll be able to build right on this. I'll make another copy or two. And then on the bottom, again, there's that odd size. I needed that in order to get the overall length correct. So now there's 2 segments on one side, 3 on the other, and the oddball one there. It's never going to be seen anyway. It's going to be at the bottom, and unless you're a little person standing down at the bottom of the stream and looking up, you wouldn't even notice that. So that's where I am right now. So I'm happy with that. Next thing I'm going to do is sort through the box of parts. This has obviously been a kit that someone started, at least to the point of painting or staining some of the parts. So I'll have to live with that. Again, most of it will not be seen because it will be covered in by the sheathing on the covered bridge. But I'm going to sort all this out, and then I will start probably working on both the one side of the trusses and the bottom simultaneously. Talk to you again soon. Okay, I thought it was time for a really quick update on the build of the Campbell covered bridge. What I've done so far doesn't look like much, but these are the two upper and lower main beams for the bridge, and has the angle blocks glued on them. First I had to glue the various pieces of the upper and lower beams together. So this one is 1, 2, 3 segments and so forth. So those are currently ready for assembly. However, each of these angle blocks has to have 3 holes drilled in it for the truss rods, and I am waiting on some drill bits and stuff to come in the mail to continue that. So in the meantime, I went on to another totally independent step, which is to construct the ties and so forth for the base to put the rails on. And Campbell had given me a drawing that shows exactly the placement of the ties. And what I have done is put a strip of Scotch double-sided permanent, not really, but tape, that's the brand, along the top edge and the bottom edge to hold these ties when I lay them on top of their position here. And I put this straight edge also onto that tape so that all I have to do is come in and place the tie, push it down, and it's being held in place. And let me just quickly do a couple so you can see how quickly that goes. Now, nothing has been glued here yet, they're just being positioned. And I will have some ties left over because I have shortened the bridge, and that's a good thing. You can certainly use ties elsewhere on the layout. And when I'm actually hand-laid track on the layout itself, I have a couple of jigs for laying the ties down, but here I'm doing it right on top of the drawing. So that's all of the ties in place. The next step is to take these stringers.
To the haunted mansion. Ready to have your mind blown? We have 9.
Sorry about that. Take these stringers, do a butt glue to get them together first, which I will do, and cut them to length. And then I will come and glue one set of stringers along here, the other set of stringers over here. And once put some weight on them, and once they are dry, pry this whole assembly up off of the double-sided tape. Okay. And then glue the guardrails onto the top. Turn it over and glue the guardrails along the top, and then I can lay the track. Alrighty, that's it for an update right now. Talk to you again soon. Okay, and quick update on building the Campbell covered bridge. You knew I had to drill like 60 holes through these angle blocks in the top and lower beams, and I did a video on getting this drill press ready. I still had some problems. I wanted to put a fence on there so that I could just take these beams and put them in place. Having very difficult time clamping the guard that I was going to put on there to this base because it's hollow and so forth. And my son stopped over yesterday and I was talking to him about it, and he says, why don't you build an extended base of Luan, get it out past the cast aluminum, and then you have no trouble clamping your guard on there. So there it is. And right now I have already done, let's see, 40 out of the 60 holes, and I'm putting the center hole in. And again, they're supposed to be top dead center on these angle blocks and lined up with the grooves in the beams. So so far so good. Just show you how I kind of do this, and I raise the drill press up until I can see I got it top dead center. I raise and lower it a little bit so I don't put pressure on that drill bit till I get far enough into the wood. That's it. I check. It's right in the groove where it belongs. I like to turn the drill off to do my centering. And there you go. I got one more hole to drill in this. I take my truss rods and just kind of clean out the holes, make sure they go through all the way, and almost use it like a file, running it back and forth to get rid of any remaining sawdust that's inside those holes. Also make it easier for me when I actually assemble the bridge to get those truss rods in. And there's my last one on this. And I think I only have 5 holes to go after this. So let's see. Get these lined up. And there you go. So something that I was perseverating on for, well, weeks actually, turned out to not be that bad. All right, talk to you again soon. Okay, just a 15-second tip here. I'm assembling one of the side trusses, and all of the inner beams were pre-cut by Campbell, and of course over the many years it's been around, with moisture being absorbed and so forth, some were a little bit too long. You sand those down. Some of them were just perfect, and every once in a while you got one that was a little short. And looking at it, I said, boy, I could just fit a 3x5 card between the beam and the main upper beam. I said, that's all it takes. So here you can see all I did was glue a piece of 3x5 card onto the end, trimmed it after it dried. Now it fits perfect. Just a tip. Okay, onward. Alright, another little update. One of the things that makes this build different than building a structure or some other type of tower or crane or whatever is that you have all these truss rods that have to be installed. Getting those to look well, spaced properly and parallel to each other and perpendicular to the top and bottom beams and so forth is the proper placement of the angle posts. And I was very careful on that. I put the angle posts on, angle blocks, on one of the top beams, and once they were dry, I would lay every other top or bottom beam right next to it and glue the angle blocks so that they were all in the same position. And then you saw me drill the holes with the drill press, which gave them some accuracy. And so I was in pretty good position to get nice looking truss rods installed. The only thing that I would do next, once I constructed the side trusses, was I came back, put that drill bit into a pin vise, and from the outside located the holes I had previously drilled with the drill press, and then cleaned them out by drilling down through them. And the reason I did that was it was possible that in the gluing process, as I was gluing these outer beams here and so forth, these diagonal beams, that one of them could infringe a little bit on the previous hole, so I drilled them all clear so I didn't run into any problems. And now I'm just going to show you how I have been installing the truss rods. So here I'm in the middle of this beam. I have these 6 truss rods installed. I come from the outside, feed it down, and then as it's nearing the bottom, get my long nose pliers. I can see the hole that I've recently cleaned out. Line it up and push it down in. Got it flush. Now, ultimately, once I have installed all of these, I'm going to come back and be gluing these plates that look like metal plates that have 3 bolts in them that Campbell included in their kit, and those are going to be glued right on top of those truss rods, those 3 truss rods. Like this one would be on top of those 3. So ultimately that's going to hold those truss rods in place. But in the meantime, while I'm doing the rest of my building, I've been just putting a little dab of super glue on each truss rod where it enters the angle box. And so I put a little puddle on a piece of wax paper, and I pick it up with this pin that I have in a very old pin vise, and I'll come in and just touch the wire down near the hole and let that run into the hole, and it will hold it in place while I continue to install all of the truss rods. Once they're all installed, I'll come back, clean these up a little bit, cut them off their sprue, and glue those in place. So moving along, just wanted to show you a little bit on how to install those truss rods. If you did all your prep work, getting those angle blocks properly positioned in the first place, and then drilling the holes carefully, as I did with the drill press, you don't run into any problems. Okay, talk to you again soon. It is time to start assembling the bridge into one unit. You glue the 2 side truss assemblies together with these floor beams. The floor beams are 1/4 by 1/8. Supposed to be 2 packages of 25 in the box. There was only 1 package of 25. The previous owner had already started gluing these together. You glue them together in sets of 3, and once they're glued together, you then glue these between the 2 side trusses underneath, and that gives you the bottom connectivity that you're looking for. So I need to cut a bunch more. Luckily, in my collection of strip wood, I had a whole package of 1/4 by 1/8, and what I'm doing now is using the X-Acto miter box to cut a strip of this into the 13 additional ones that I need. I didn't need 25, I only needed 13 because we shortened the bridge, if you recall. So what I'm doing is putting the, if you're not familiar, by the way, with this miter box, the bottom is milled out to take different and hold in place different width strip wood, and the middle one is for the 1/4 inch wide. So that's what I have right now, and I put the knife in the slot. I use the spacer, Of course, now you're not going to see it because I have it coming in from the wrong direction, so let me switch it around. So this knife goes in the slot. I put one of the original ones in here as a spacer, and then I just push the new piece of strip wood down until it meets the same length. Describe a cut in it so I know where that is, and then cut it to size. This miter box I use all the time. I really couldn't live without one. So if you're going to do much scratch building, for sure you're going to need one of those. So if you don't have one yet, put it on your Christmas list. Alright, just double checking. Same length. We're good. That's number 4. Alright, 4 down, 9 to go. Onward. Okay, another quick update on the covered bridge build. And just to show you now that we have one assembly. I guess since our last update, I finished adding all the truss rods on the side trusses. I added the battens on the side where we will be putting the sheathing, just to give you an idea of what that's going to look like on the side real quick. On the ends it goes all the way up to the top, both ends, and then we fill in the middle only up to here, allowing the tops of the trusses and the truss rods to show. And that, I guess, in the real world had one purpose, which was to let the smoke out of the covered bridge as it went by. But the nice thing here is that it shows that truss work, and otherwise it would be totally covered up, and then you would start to wonder why the heck you did it in the first place. So yeah, I was going to paint it red, but I went with the gray since the previous owner had painted a lot of stuff gray and it'll show through. So now it'll all look like it was planned. Gluing them together into one unit involves gluing the floor beams in place, and I have at this point just have to finish up the center. It's very easy to do and take me about 5 minutes. Then there's going to be a couple of top braces, but ultimately I have to make 7 of these trusses, roof trusses, which will be glued in, so it'll become a very stable unit when it's all done. Certainly after I put the siding on as well. Then this, which I had already shown you that I had finished, fits right down the center here. I will put the track on first, of course, and yeah, we're moving fairly quickly. I'll give you another update when there's something else significant done. Until then, happy modeling. Okay, folks, the next update. Thought I'd just show you a little bit about making the roof trusses. I've made 2 photocopies of that part of the diagram. And again, you are to build the trusses right on top of the diagram. Campbell provided the timbers for it to the right length or over length. There's a little bit of fuzz on these, so I'm just getting rid of the fuzz. Have some Scotch double-sided tape down at the corners, and I am just laying this right on top of the diagram. You can see I have taken a square, put it down here right through the top of the truss, and extended that line so that I can see it good. And I come in with my razor blade, get it on the line, look straight down the top of the razor blade, and cut it in place. Get rid of that. That's one side of the truss cut to shape. Now I'm going to come over here and do the same thing on the other side. Got some glue on my razor blade holder. Okay, so I am going to lay this one in place. That tape holds it down nicely while I again line up my guillotine razor blade here. Pivot it down right on the line. Got it. Now all I will do is get this out of the way so I can do the bottom cut. All I got to do is get that cut to 45 degrees or whatever that angle is, probably not 45. And again, come down the line perfectly. Cut that. And cut this. Okay. Lay one side of the truss in place. Push it down. Get a little bit of glue, and we're going to put it on the other side here that we've cut to the proper length, or the proper shape and length. Line it up perfectly, push it together, wipe the glue off, come in with a toothpick and wipe that excess off. A little bit of white glue here and here, both ends, and lay it down in place, push tight, wipe off, and these are all going to be hidden anyway, but so that's really glued. Now what I do is I have a dab of super glue on this piece of wax paper, pick it up with this pin, put it on each joint to really strengthen the joint. And we will let that dry for a minute or so. Meantime, this truss, which I had done before I started the video, should be dry, so I come in underneath the truss, separate it from the double-sided tape very easily here. There's that truss, goes with the two I've previously made, so now I am up to 3 trusses of the 7 complete. This one will be dry in a minute, and I continue to move on. It won't take me another 5-7 minutes, and I'll have all the trusses built. Okay, that's how you build those trusses. Talk to you again soon. Well, we're getting close to the end on this build, but I wanted to kind of show you as a follow-up to the last update on building the roof trusses, what they look like in place. And you can see I've also put all the siding on the bridge. Now I had spray painted this with a rattle can, and I very specifically tried not to get an even coat, because this variation in colors and so forth that you see will be one step in my weathering process on the bridge. But all of the siding is on the bridge all the way around, and you can see the roof trusses all in place. What they wanted you to do in the plans was to take a piece of wood and measure it between each truss, cut it and glue it in place up in the peaks between each truss to stabilize the trusses, to get them to kind of help support each other. I just ran some lateral bracing underneath the trusses in there, and that has produced the same thing. These trusses are very stable now. They don't move at all. So yeah, ready for the roofing. Now I know, there's probably some modeling law that says if you're building a Campbell kit, you should use Campbell shingles, but I'm not. For a couple of reasons. First of all, the subroof has to be pieced because the pieces that they give you are not long enough. So you can see that there's a joint here, and that's a lateral gluing that I have there. And I wanted to help support those by using the 3M transfer tape on the surface here to help kind of glue everything together. And I'm using shingles that are pre-gummed on the back, adhesive on the back, so that I don't have to wet them like you do with Campbell shingles, because they warned you in the instructions that this roofing is going to have, because of its size and so forth, would have a tendency to warp, and they wanted you to kind of watch out for that when you put the Campbell shingles on. So I'm using shingles by another manufacturer entirely. This is Scale Models shingles, and that's what I'm using. I have a good amount done on this side of the roof, and you can kind of get the idea of what that's going to look like when it's in place. And then of course some weathering and so forth. So getting very close. I should finish up the roof today, and then glue it in place, and then finally I have to put some rails down on these ties, and I'm going to have dual gauge trackage, so I'll have 3 rails going in there, then glue this in, and the bridge will be done. So the next time you see this, the bridge will be done. I'll just make some final comments, and that'll be it for the video. Talk to you soon. Okay, this will be the last update on the build of the Campbell covered bridge. There's actually, probably other than installing it, of course, 2 things left to do. As I mentioned, I think in the last update, one is to put the rails onto the tie assembly. This is not installed yet, it's just to show you how it'll look. And the other thing is to do some weathering. But this video on the build is already approaching a half hour long, and that's beyond the limit of most people's patience in looking at a video on YouTube. So I thought what I would do is just show you the bridge complete, and then do a short video just showing you how I install the dual gauge trackage, and another little short one on weathering. But yeah, this is built early on in the build, if you recall, and it's all ready for the rails. You can see through and kind of get a view from each side of the unit. Other than I said, there's some weathering and the tracks, and you will get to see that. It'll just be in a couple of shorts that I will release. Probably one of them next Tuesday, and one either on Friday or the next week. A couple of closing comments. As I have said many times in a couple of videos on Campbell kits and throughout this build, the instructions can be a challenge, especially for a novice and for an old dude who's not so quick on the uptake anymore. But perseverance and a lot of staring and comparing when you stare at your parts and what you're building and the drawings, and you can persevere and get it done. But what I did say is, once you are done, you end up with a very good looking model, and very happy with the way this one came. And it's one of the reasons I chose the Slate Run Railroad, was because it did indeed have a covered bridge on it. And now I have built that key element of my upper deck layout. So yeah, they make up into nice models. The other thing I like to do about once a year at my age, I'm very quickly approaching another birthday, and when I will be 77. Eyesight's not what it was when I was younger, obviously. The steadiness in my hands is not what it was at one time. Some days it's absolutely atrocious. And at least once a year I like to try to build a challenging kit and still see if I got it in me, because I have a lot more things to do. So it's kind of like a benchmark. Feel good about the build and how it turned out. So okay, we'll wrap this up. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. It doesn't take you but a second, cost you nothing, and really does help out the channel. If you have not already done so, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll be talking to you again soon. And in the meantime, happy modeling.